Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 1 of a limited run podcast series. The goal of this series is we're going to have a podcast style like video dedicated to each Halo game. And I'm joined with BTC Hosticide. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone.
The point and the purpose of this is we wanted to have a long form dedicated show that kind of talks about our loves, our dislikes, our favorite memories, the cringe moments of each major Halo game as we get closer to Halo Infinite. And Hosty has a lot of Halo knowledge, and I think this is going to be quite shudderful. We're going to have a playlist of all of the videos in this series. We're going to go in chronological order. So we're actually going to start with Halo Wars 1, which I think, Hosty, is the perfect game to kick this off.
It is the perfect game for this channel here, and as well for both of our experiences. I think
Yeah,
just how much we've played, and then we're gonna end it on Halo Wars 2,
we
as it
are.
should be.
We are. So collectively, between you and I, we have hundreds of hours of Halo Wars. So I think this episode is going to have a lot of knowledge and information. And I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on how we did in the comments down below as we improve as this series progresses. But nonetheless, we're going to go ahead and dive in with the development, the release, all of the important dates. Hosty, why don't you go over everything about the release of the first Halo Wars game?
Absolutely. So, Halo Wars 1 was made on, released on March 3rd, 2009 by Ensemble Studios. After that, it received a remaster in 2016. And then the game actually got an individual release for itself in April 2017 on Steam. The main differences between the old one and the new one, the remastered definitive edition, is it has 60 FPS, improved visuals, and it has all the DLC in it already. Let me tell you, I remember being a small little boy back in the day, and I was just in a mall, right? Because malls were a thing back then still.
Right. They
Rip
weren't
malls.
wasted.
Exactly. And I went in. I was like, oh my gosh, it's a GameStop. I have to go in. And as I always go in, I'm always leaving disappointed. But this time I didn't. Walked in, saw that there was just this random Halo game. I didn't even know Halo Wars released.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, just me sitting there playing Halo 3 all day, having absolutely no idea Halo Wars was a thing. Walk into this GameStop and I'm like, what's this? Why have I never heard of this? So naturally, I go up, I buy it. The guy is like, hey, are you 17? And I'm like, no. And he's like, okay, don't tell anybody you bought it here. So I buy it. And I end up leaving there, going home, taking the game. And I'm like, dude, this is awesome. So I had never played a console RTS before this game.
So your love of Halo Wars was kind of an accidental discovery then.
Yeah, that man who was like, hey, don't tell anybody you bought it here. Well, I'm telling people now,
Right.
But yeah, so that guy giving me this game it was like already like $40 when I bought it too. It dropped in price quick.
I'm sure it did. And because I don't think RTS games necessarily hold their retail value compared to like a first person shooter. But my experience was completely the opposite. One of the first games I ever played was Age of Empires, which Ensemble Studios made. And then, like everyone else who was a PC gamer in the 90s, they played Age of Empires 2 like religiously. And then I was actually a really big fan of Age of Mythology, their spin-off. And Halo Wars was the next game that they developed after Age of Mythology. So I had been following up and, really looking forward to release of Halo Wars. And I think this point is a really good time to just spit out some fun facts about the game, because I think there's a lot of interesting things that people don't know about this game. Firstly, if you want to know all the really cool details of how Halo Wars was made, the tension behind it, Ensemble Studios closed after its development, You should get the book Blood, Sweat, and Pixels. It's a book that goes over various game developments, how these incredible stories of how games are made, and there is a chapter dedicated to Halo Wars. That's where some of these facts come from. But Halo Wars was originally meant to be not a Halo game. It was meant to be an RTS game that it was kind of like Earthlings and Martians were fighting against each other, taking like inspiration from War of the Worlds. And cringe, maximum cringe.
I'm glad it became a Halo Wars game. Oh
Me,
my gosh.
me too. So Microsoft greenlit the project. They said on Ensemble Studios, you can make this as a console RTS, but the only, I guess, agreement is that it has to be a Halo game, and that really took them off guard. So they had to create so much of these vehicles, the lore, the characters, in a short amount of time, and Bungie was not very happy with this. And to be fair, they were, neck deep in development of ODST at the time, even Halo 3, and then towards the end of the release, it was Halo Reach as well. Bungie was working on all of those games during the development of Halo Wars, and Ensemble needed to reach out to I wanted to say 343. They wanted to reach out to to Bungie for, how would the lore look like in this scenario, or what would happen with these types of units, like what happened in the history of these characters. And Bungie was so busy sometimes they would either never get back to them or give them non-answers, or weren't very helpful in development. So Ensemble really had to take the lead on a lot of the lore in Halo Wars. I think they did a phenomenal job.
Oh yeah,
it looks really good.
All of the units, the only one that I have problems with was probably the Vulture. Everything else felt pretty UNSC or pretty Covenant. Like how they worked with the engineers being the support class, and Cyclopses now they're an anti-vehicle unit, but the cringe Clops.
That's right.
Halo Wars 1 was awful, but I think they did a fantastic job on overall with all the new units, putting in Cobras, which rip Cobras.
I love Cobras.
The prototype for Kodiaks, the Rhinos.
Yep.
Those were amazing.
The Kodiak and the Rhino, I think, did kind of like a Dragon Ball Z fusion dance thing, and it became the Kodiak.
Yeah.
It takes inspirations from both of those units, and Halo Wars was actually the first game that used the blur cutscenes that is almost kind of standard now for a Halo Wars game.
Oh my gosh!
They returned in Halo Wars 2, and I remember. I still think to this day the Halo Wars 1 cutscenes are the best in the series. There are some really good Halo Wars 2 cutscenes as well. Halos 2, 3, 4, and 5 all used in-engine cutscenes, and it wasn't until we saw Halo 2 Anniversaries when Blur did those remastered Halo 2 cutscenes, which are so good.
Honestly, the Halo 2 cutscenes, we'll talk about that later, but I thought those were going to put 343 under with how expensive they were.
Yeah.
and then MCC just absolutely flopping. So.
Yeah. And the final fun fact is Halo Wars was the first Halo game that did not feature the Master Chief, and it was also the first Halo game to introduce other Spartans. So up until this time, you got to realize that we had only had Halo 1, 2, and 3. Halo Wars came out about 4 or 5 months prior to ODST.
What, you're saying Dustin Echoes isn't a Spartan? He's real.
Echo 419 is not a Spartan? Cringe.
What? That was cringe.
Hosty, how did Halo Wars do on the critics?
It did okay. I know the actual community wasn't very positive about it because they were all about FPS games, but
right.
The actual critics were a little bit nicer to it. So you have IGN with a 8 out of 10. We have a GameStop with a 6.5 out of 10. Get out of here, GameStop. You just like your FPS games, okay?
It's cringe.
Yeah, and then Metacritic coming in with the 82%. It looks like IGN and Metacritic knew what was up, but GameSpot, not GameStop, was just like, it's an RTS game on console. It's gonna be terrible.
Yeah,
Terrible.
yeah, I can understand if someone's not an RTS fan that they wouldn't
Mhm.
necessarily like this game. And Halo was actually originally intended to be an RTS game, so it was really Halo Wars was going back to the roots of what the series was intended to be. And if you compare the caliber, the quality of the game, of moment to moment gameplay between Halo 3 and Halo Wars, I think most people would say that they enjoy Halo 3 more. I don't think that's an unpopular
Mhm.
opinion, but Halo Wars both as a Halo game and as an RTS game, I think it did both very, very well. On
So
console too, of all things.
I had to look this up, and Age of Empires was given a 7.4 out of 10.
Oh. Oh.
On GameSpot. So I don't know if I trust them. Yeah, they must not like RTS games.
No, they
What
must
is
not.
up with this?
They're too
Yeah,
casual.
exactly. And then on GameSpot, it looks like the game itself was revealed as a almost an 8. It was at a 7.9. So at least their viewers understand a little bit more.
Right.
That's cringe.
That is
Okay.
that is very cringe. So those are really the facts of Halo Wars, the critical reception, the release dates, all those things. I think that's really the end of the objective part of the show. I think we're going to move on to the subjective part where we're each going to dive into our favorite memories, our favorite mission, a cringe compilation moment, the cringe moments in the game, and things we liked and we disliked. And how about we just each go through each point? You go your favorite memory, I'll do mine, and we can kind of take turns.
Okay, we can do a little back and forth seas here.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
Hosty, what's your favorite memory in Halo Wars?
Gosh, my favorite memory, you're gonna love this, is Terminal Moraine. When you get set up on the bridge and you just set up that base, get a bunch of like Wolverines, Cobras, and just kind of hold that bridge forever. Just
Yes.
you guys, the inventor of the Super Turtles, I was doing that too, but I didn't do it against people. I just did it against AIs because
Oh, I see. I see.
I was terrible at the game back then.
I actually wrote down the same exact thing. We laughed when we were comparing our notes before we started recording.
Yeah.
I think that Ensemble went out of their way to ensure that those bridge bases on Terminal Moraine, with all the features it had, with the collapsible bridge that no player could control, by the way, it just would turn on and off. I think it was every minute at the top of the minute. It
Yeah,
it it, it would cycle. There's no way you could control it like in Sentry.
or in the case of fissures, never.
That's right. That's right.
They have the controls there and everything on that map.
But they also had the towers, so you could put, if you're a cutter, you would put either Spartans or ODSTs. There was that bonus
Mhm.
reactor, and then there were 2 mini base slots as well. And so what Ed and I would do is we would exchange the mini base slots. So like we would each spend the entire match fighting to control those side bases. And then let's say I were to take the main base, Ed would take the minis. And then on his side, if he took the main base, I took the minis. So, and then we would usually try to have about 10 to 15 pop. Well, I guess really close to 10 because Halo Wars had a low pop limit. But
Yeah,
it was in case we needed to pump units right there to help the other player out, we could do so.
and I'll know the pop difference from Halo Wars 1 to Halo Wars 2 was weird when I
It
first did
was.
it because you have like all of your units just one pop and then some of the vehicles like 3 pop, and it made sense. Then you go to Halo Wars 2 and you're like 11 population for a grizzly
That's
or
right. Or
or
40
something.
for your super
Yeah.
units.
And
Yeah.
it was what, 20 back then?
I think so. Yeah. Or oh dear, I don't know. I think it was because you could only build one
Yeah,
scarab.
2. Yep.
Well, could you build two?
You could build 2 scarabs and 10 engineers.
Okay,
So yeah, it was 40 and then 50 with reinforcements.
that's right. Because Covenant had in Halo Wars 1, Covenant usually is outclassed by UNSC, but they have a higher pop limit. which is how it kind of compensates. But yeah, we both had similar favorite memories, and there is just something about Terminal Moraine, the way that they designed that is just so much fun. I mean, it's there are the mountains or hills in the middle of the map, but I mean, you could just have so much fun on that map. I cannot tell you how many great games that Ed and I played. And it's a shame that our recording setup or situation today is not like how it was back then, because there would be so many good videos that we just missed out on that we could have recorded. But I mean, we at least have the memories, and I'm sure a lot of people that played matchmaking have great memories in Terminal Moraine as well.
Yeah, it was a great map. One thing we neither of us talked about was the fact from between Halo Wars 1 and Halo Wars 2 is how you can't just take a base. You have to kill all of the units there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting mechanic. I don't know. There is some making of behind the scenes of the development. There was something that they had planned for the Rebels, I believe, whether it was playable or a third faction or you would interact with them some way in the campaign. I honestly forget, but you're right. There's few and far between where there are hardly any free base slots. I think the only exception I can come up with is on Exile. Right next to when you start, you got that open slot.
It was mostly in just like teams, I believe, for the most part.
Yeah.
I don't. Oh no, Outskirts had open base slots, I believe. Did it?
My memory fades me on some of the slots. It has been so long, but yeah, you're right, and a lot of people would use that as an exploit for their Covenant leaders, or even the Spartans, to get some stars before combat started. And going from Halo Wars 1 to Halo Wars 2, or maybe the inverse, Halo Wars 2 to Halo Wars 1, the first Halo Wars game is so slow in terms of moment-to-moment gameplay. Your cursor moves slower, the units move slower, you get supplies slower, units take longer to train. It's just a slower game. That's not a bad thing. It's very noticeable going between the two.
Most definitely, and I agree with that completely, and I'll talk about that more whenever I get to our likes and dislikes about the game. But
yeah. Well,
I have some moments to to rant about this game. So,
okay. Well, let's go on to favorite mission. What's your favorite mission in the campaign?
Reactor, hands down. I was gonna say that map when you first get introduced to the Gremlins, but Reactor's just so different. You know, you're fighting uphill the whole time to get the reactor uphill, and if it dies, it falls all the way down.
Yeah.
And it's like a little escort mission where you get to get a bunch of like elephants, get a bunch of like Wolverines. I used a little bit of like Cobras in there.
Ooh.
And I just went like lock down, get to a certain area, lock everything down, build some units, send the units in. I played it more of like a mobile base simulator than actually a campaign mission.
That mission's kind of like a battle of attrition almost, you know. You win by a game of inches on that mission.
Yeah, and you lose a lot of inches if you mess up at all.
That's
like
right.
Units out of place, or you don't heal at the right time. You accidentally mac yourself.
I love that.
Like that. What about you? What was your favorite mission?
Mine was the last in the campaign, Escape, because I felt like that mission, you could tell that it was like the epic conclusion to this story. And that mission seemed to be like where the game is saying, okay, we've done all these little bits of interesting stuff throughout the campaign. Like you have more Spartans, or you have multiple leader powers, or you have, just drops of reinforcements. And on Escape, it's like, okay, we're just going to give you everything and just have fun. And the map was huge. That you had the Covenant versus the Flood versus UNSC, and it was just chaotic. And you got the Scarabs walking around. You don't know if they're going to annihilate your base or not. And as soon as you're fighting against the clock, all these things, and once you succeed, you get that bittersweet campaign ending. And it has been like 12 years since the game came out, but I'm still not going to spoil it. It is, I think the ending of Halo Wars 1 is really is excellent.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Excellent
The
ending.
cutscenes make it just as good too.
It
Like,
does.
the cutscene for Forge was at the end of Reactor, right?
Uh,
Yeah, it was at the end of
yes.
Reactor going into Escape.
Yep.
Man, I I loved all of that. That entire like sequence where you have to basically yeah, you're right. We shouldn't spoil it, but um that the entire like ending 2 to 3 missions was just incredible. Like well done for them switching it so quickly from, how we were talking how it was going to be like a world War of the Worlds game into a Halo game so fast. Like that's nuts how quickly they came up with that story and everything.
It is.
Um, because it and then they come back in Halo Wars 2 and just blow it out of the park again somehow. I don't know.
I thought that we'll get to Halo Wars 2 at the end of the
Yeah, we'll get to
series.
that. We'll get to that.
I do have some thoughts, but I think the campaign is stronger in the first game than in the second. But that's a conversation for another time. But let's move on.
Cringe.
Let's move on to the cringe moments. What made you cringe in Halo Wars
Well,
1?
a lot of things in this game made me cringe. From like a Scarab with 10 engineers on it to basically any exploit you could do in the game. But I will say there was one moment that like stands out above all others, and that was me messing up really hard. And so there's a mission called Relic Interior for those of you who haven't played, and there's a bridge that you can drop, right? And this is closer to like the end of the mission. You probably only have like 2 or 3 minutes left. You just have to walk over the bridge, walk up a little hill, and you're done. Me being the younger person and the stupider person I was, walks over to the bridge, and I'm like, okay, yeah, let's go. Let's walk over the bridge, all units. And I'm like, what's this do? Not reading, clicks up, clicks
Oh,
A.
the bridge controls.
Yep, just drops all my units off of it, and the mission fails.
Because it was those grizzlies that you have to save, right?
The Grizzlies and Forge. Forge went down, of course. He doesn't actually die for realsies.
Right.
But I couldn't complete the mission because I lost all of my units, and all I had left was Anders and down Forge, so I couldn't get back up to the top.
Oh,
I
dear.
just died before I got there, and yeah, that was pretty rough. I didn't do that again. We'll say that.
No, lesson learned. The game can be quite unforgiving at times if there's certain things you just need to experience to like understand how Halo Wars operates. And for me, it was a lot of the exploits people would do in multiplayer were kind of cringe because I feel like in RTS games, there's a little bit more of an etiquette of respect between players, if you know what I mean. Like you see a lot of, I make a joke about it, but I say GGs will be exchanged. That's because usually in RTS games, people will say GG at the end, and people just won't do things even if they are exploits unless they're not a nice person. And I'm talking about like on Frozen Valley, the Scarab is the only unit that can get on the ridge and can like just completely cheese your base if they want to kind of shortcut to a win. And if you're not if you don't have a Mac or a cryo, you're actually like you lost that base. There's nothing you can do. The one I wrote down in my notes is the Pelican exploit on Terminal Moraine. So you can take your Warthog as soon as it starts to one of the corners of the map, and then Pelican that Warthog back to your base. And as the Pelican is flying back, it will give you line of sight of those minis on the bridge bases in the center of Terminal Moraine, and then you can take those minis and pretty much take control of the center. The reason why that's important is the bridge does not turn on Terminal Moraine until like the first minute of the match. So even if your opponent sends like their Ghost or Warthog to wait for the bridge to turn on, you can already control that area before they even get a chance to get over there. And there's plenty of other examples. You can get the Scarab out of Terminal Moraine, or Vulture spamming over the wall on the docks We all know that we've done that, by the way. Everybody's done
Vultures on docks. Oh my gosh. Docks was it was a mistake.
it, I because of
It's such
docks
a map.
we got Sentry, so
Yep. Yeah, it's basically I would say it's closer to Badlands in terms of like map layout where you have the there's no like center node or anything. You can't walk over it, but you have to fly.
right.
But my man, you have to put units up in that little area or else you're gonna lose.
That's right. That is right. Well, those are the cringe moments. We're gonna go now, kind of on a ranting rampage on what we liked
Yes.
and what we didn't like. Hosty, we'll start with you. What did you love overall about Halo Wars? What points stood out for you?
Halo Wars, unlike some newer games that you have nowadays where you have to have online, you could absolutely play this entire game. Of course, you can't 100% it, but you could play the entire game offline and still have plenty to do. There's some, you have to get gold in a mission. Well, okay, you have to go back to the mission because you didn't do the hidden objective. Okay, well, you have to go back to the mission again to get like the par time on it. Okay, and then after that, you have to go back to the mission again because there's something else you have to complete on it, or like you need to get a lore card or the black boxes or the were the skull yeah the skulls were still in Halo
Yep.
Wars 1, right?
Yep, skulls were there.
I didn't know if they added those in DE or not, but yeah, and there's so many small things in just the campaign missions that make you go back like 3 or 4 times just to find new things, not even playing it back for nostalgia like you would do with Halo 3 or Halo 2. Just to complete the missions, you have to go back like those 3 or 4 times, get everything, which is what I like about Halo games in general. They do that now with like lore that you have to click or skulls, but there's not only that, you have that timeline, and I see you added that in.
Yes.
I'll let you rant about that a little bit, but you have the timeline where you can go in and see all of the events for basically up until Halo 3. Like when Halo Wars came out, they had everything in there.
Yeah, they did.
And if you did have online, you could go in and play endless matchmaking. The custom games was phenomenal, even without live, because you had the best thing I have ever seen in an RTS game, which was the scaling AI. Like, the AI got better as you got better and got worse as you got worse.
Right. It was called the
Oh my.
automatic difficulty.
That was incredible because for newer players, you may get absolutely curb stomped your first couple games, but then you won't after those first couple. The AI will start to get as good as you are or as bad as you are, and you'll work your way up to harder difficulties. I will say, like I was going back to live, matchmaking was phenomenal. I loved the true skill system, which they have in MCC and they have in Halo 3 and Halo 2. It was the perfect way to play online because your true skill was different for each person you played with too.
It
Like
was
your party true skill, which was I've only seen that in StarCraft besides this, where your party has its own true skill. So if you go and get a Smurf or get a friend who's never played the game before, you're gonna have to get your true skill back up with them and fight through that before you start fighting all the harder people, and it makes sense. I mean,
I actually
I
thought
liked it.
I actually thought that the true skill matchmaking was incredibly accurate in Halo Wars 1. Some people may disagree, but I always thought that the true skill actually reflected like what my true skill was, if you know what I mean. I mean, it just I felt that I always met someone that was equivalent to my skill set every single time I keyed up for a match.
Yeah. And I can attest to that too because I used to play matchmaking almost religiously. I did not get to general, unfortunately.
Oh,
But yeah,
that should be
it's
illegal.
cringe. Yeah, it's very cringe. I need to go back before the game gets sunset.
Yeah.
But I remember being like, "Oh my gosh, I win so many games in matchmaking. I'm gonna try a game battles game," and I got demolished.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely curb stomped. I forgot the guy's name. I think it was like DC something. I was like, okay, maybe matchmaking's balanced. After playing that, what do you like about the game?
There's a lot that I like about the game. I go back and forth between Halo Wars 1 and Halo Wars 2 being my favorite Halo game in the whole series, but I thought that from a design perspective, the multiplayer maps, every single one of them, with very little exception, were just extremely fun to play. I thought they did such a good job of different color schemes, of different environments, of different features each map offered. Some maps had, like Charmel Moraine, as we keep referring to it, had individual bases that you could turtle for forever, or Beasley's Plateau, where it was an unbalanced 1v1 on both sides because someone would have an additional expo base diagonally across from each other. So the person you're facing directly against had a disadvantage or an advantage depending on where you spawn in the map. So either your teammate would have to go help you or you would have to go help your teammate. And then you had, just maps where it really, I just felt like they all clicked and were so well. Like Labyrinth is a fantastic map that had the feature of all those different protector sentinels, the offensive, the defensive, and the healing ones. And I thought that almost all of the three maps were so good, like Frozen Valley and I want to call it Fort Jordan, but
It's
Fort
14.
Dean.
Yeah.
Fort Dean was
Yep.
great. The only map I think I actually hate is Exile. Um, with
I think that's like a community-wide thing, though. Is
Yeah,
Exile was just a horrible map.
because whoever was on the bottom was really just kind of screwed as soon as the game started, and there would be
Yep.
times where I hate that spawning down there so much as I would just take my Warthog, and I think there's an open slot on Exile. I would just go up to the top floor and
Mhm.
take that Expo, and that's pretty much where I would start. Because I knew I'd just get wrecked at the bottom. Um,
Yeah, any sort of rush early on, like Arbiter's Suicide Grunt rush, or you would have Brute Chieftains, like Brute Rush, any, or even Warthogs, like early scouts coming in would just demolish you down there. Your base turrets aren't going to do anything. You cannot survive.
yeah, you can't. I thought that the control scheme of Halo Wars was great because a lot of people I think are fearful of RTSs because of their complex control scheme on mouse and keyboard. Like there's a lot of buttons to memorize, a lot of places to click, a lot of micromanaging. And Halo Wars simplified that from the way that bases were built to how you got resources to how you managed units with, the notorious all units command. They did a great job of making an RTS accessible on the gamepad. And really, ever since they've done that, we've not seen something that successful. Not only as an RTS, but an accessible one at that. I mean, they did Command and Conquer ports on the 360, and those had decent control schemes as well, but it was not as good as Halo Wars. And there were, like I said at the beginning, there were so many different strategies you could do in multiplayer. I thought the multiplayer community was really, really good in Halo Wars 1. There were just so many great battles and hilarious things that would happen in your matches. My favorite thing was that friendly fire is turned on for leader power. So, if how I'm petty with nodes and mini bases. Well, when people would take my crates, I would fire a Mac and blow them up. Don't take my crates. I will take an L with the resources. It cost me, what is it, 500 or 600 resources to acquire 100 in crates. And yeah, don't take my crates. I'll Mac you. Or as if you're the prophet, you can beam your teammates. I mean, it's just hilarious the stuff that you can do. It cracked me up.
Oh my god. Yeah, speaking of like Max and stuff like that, I remember I used to do this really funny thing in threes where we would all three play cutter
Yeah.
and then just go max someone's base.
Yeah. I
Oh my gosh. I forgot how good Max used to be.
you
And then you play the mission and you get like what 42
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, yeah. If I believe, if memory serves me right, if you're playing in doubles, and you flew a Hornet over, if you did a double quad Mac, and then you both dropped 10 ODSTs and did the Y ability with the rockets, you could take out any base if it was UNSC. So that was
That
amazing.
sounds about right. Yeah. Oh
Uh,
my gosh. Oh,
yeah.
ODST inbound.
Oh, hell jumpers standing down. I mean, it's just so iconic. It
You knew that if you played that game. Like,
Yes. Yeah, you did, and I think Halo Wars has my favorite achievement in all of gaming, and that's the running the show achievement, because it really is an achievement that you get simply by playing the game. You have to obtain the general rank on Xbox Live, but there is a little bit of skill based on that achievement, because Halo Wars ran on a point system, and the more points you acquired would be the faster that you rank up. So it wasn't necessarily win this many games and you rank up, or complete these many games and you rank up. Like we see in a lot of games. Halo Wars 2 even does this, but in Halo Wars 1, if you played better, you would get a higher multiplier for your overall score, and that would make you rank up faster. And
oh man.
when you got that achievement, you just knew that all your hard work paid off.
I was thinking about it and I'm like, there was a lot more on the post game screens in Halo Wars 1.
Yes, you
Like you had tech, you had how much like resources, of course you made, what your maximum tech level was. Your combat efficiency was on there.
Yeah,
I completely forgot about that.
the game would actually tell you how well you did, and it didn't care if it told you that you played bad.
Yeah.
It would rank your combat efficiency on a scale of 1 to 5, and then it would tell you what place you got. So like, there'd be some games I would play with Ed if we were in twos or even threes, and I would be horrible. We win the game, and I would get sixth place. And the game would tell you, and you could actually click on units built, and it would tell you how many of each individual unit you made. Like, you built 6 wraiths, you built 10 jackals, whatever the case may be. You had to build your chieftain 40 times.
Yeah, and that information was very crucial too, because you could see what couldn't you see what your teammate was making too?
You could, yeah.
Yeah, because if you're losing, you could go back and look. Hey, I was trash at this game. What did my teammate make to absolutely just destroy them? And what units? Not even units, really. What was different on his score that made him better? And you could reflect on that. It's kind of like how now they have all that on Waypoint, but in Halo Wars 1, it was all in game.
It
You
was.
didn't have to go and see anything special, go to another website, have a PC, and just it made sense.
It
I
did.
think. Yeah.
It made it accessible for, quote quote casuals that played Halo Wars could see how you did right there. You didn't have to go to another device to get those stats, and I really appreciated that. And lastly, I put that Halo Wars Definitive Edition, the remaster specifically, did a great job in allowing modability. I'm not sure if that was intentional, by the way. I know there's no sort of Steam Workshop integration. There's no like official modding tools, but I think due to the age of the game, it's pretty easy to crack open. And Definitive Edition specifically has a very active modding community. It's like a sub community within Halo Wars, and those guys have spent years since it came out making so many cool things. On the channel, I have a series dedicated to Halo Wars 1 modding videos. You can do everything from playing as the Flood to, most recently, you can now play as the Prometheans. They're starting to backport stuff from Halo Wars 2 into Halo Wars 1. Like, I just saw Goliaths and Yap Yap appear in Halo Wars 1. A lot of the cut content with like Sentinels and base building, different mechanics are all unlocked, and it's relatively simple to download a mod package and install it, and the game really does not care if it's modded or not. And you can even host like modded lobbies. If you have this mod and I have this mod, we can play online together with the mod. It's just so cool that it allows that to happen. I don't think that was intentional, but I know that has been what people buy the game for specifically, is that you can mod it and can continue to enjoy it. I think that's quite pitiful.
Frozen Valley. That map, I remember specifically going around in deathmatch, and just took every base on the map, got max population, and just waited. I don't know what I was doing. I was just waiting to get more reactors, see how many reactors I could build on that map.
Yeah.
While just turtling one AI into a corner, bullying him.
Even with the tutorial for newer players, the game can like give you hints on what the enemy's making. Remember, it'd be like,
yeah,
our enemy is so distracted with base building they've forgotten to train any units or something. Or you hear Serena go, ally or enemy attack incoming to this base.
That's kind of relevant too, because you get something. We're gonna get something like that in Infinite with AIs.
That's true. That is true.
Look at that. Everyone's always wishing for AIs in a FPS Halo game, where Halo Wars had it in 2009.
That's right. Take that,
wow.
nerds.
Get wrecked, FPS community.
Well, not all can be fantastic. Not every game's perfect. What did you dislike about Halo Wars? Anything that stood out?
I love and hate this game. Okay. There's a lot I hate about Halo Wars. The fact that some leaders were better than others. You had super OP Spartans with getting the 16-star Grizzlies. That was ridiculous. Along with there's no theater, and they even had that in Halo 3. There's no Forge. They had that in Halo 3, which came before it. There's no multi-team as well. Now, this is something I think like StarCraft or a lot of other RTSs did really well, is like multi-team or FFA. We haven't seen that in any Halo Wars game at all.
No, there is actually a guy that's trying to unlock that with a mod, but he said it's actually quite difficult.
Yeah, the game's just based around red versus blue, and that's it. There have been instances where matchmaking has accidentally launched a 4v2.
Yeah.
I've seen that before, but it's so weird because it puts the fourth person inside of another teammate's base.
Oh.
And there's no collisions on bases. So you can just build on their base slots, and then you have two base slots on top of each other. It's really weird, but that's just how integrated red versus blue is in the Halo Wars games.
Yeah. I didn't know about that. That's quite interesting.
Yeah. If you've never seen that, I believe Scoopman, when he used to play this game, had some like customs where he got that to work. But
interesting.
I don't know if they're still out there. You can probably search for them on either YouTube or on Twitch even. There should be some clips for it, but it's a thing. And then the bases are just paper. Oh my gosh. You could walk up with an honor guard and just slap a base.
Yeah.
And it'll just tear apart. I don't get it, but
Covenant really had an advantage with bases with the shield gens, because if you were getting like, let's say you were getting turtled or reverse turtle, whatever the case may be, and like this happened on Frozen Valley a lot too, they would take a base and they didn't necessarily need it because there's so many base slots on Frozen Valley, and they would put like 7 shield gens on it, and you would have to send your army there for like an hour. But like I said earlier, if you're UNSC, you could do a double quad Mac, or I don't know, I used to call it the Octo Mac, and then some ODSTs, and it would vanish. So it would go from one extreme to the other depending on how many shield gens you had on bases. But yeah, UNSC definitely had the short end of the short stick in that pile there.
Yep. And to add to that, the base would recharge the entire shield once it got to like 20 or 30 seconds without being shot.
Yeah.
And the worst part about that is when that shield started coming up, there were sometimes glitches where the shield would just keep going up until it got to full, and
Oh.
you couldn't stop it. Yeah, if you were in like a certain lobby, or if there was like a really bad connection in your game, the shield would just keep going up until it made it to full. So if you're attacking it, it would just keep healing.
Oh dear.
That's like combat repair in Halo Wars 2.
It really is. Or Siphon out of combat.
Yeah.
Um,
on Decimus,
that's right.
on his leader.
I have some dislikes as well. I agree with you. I thought that a theater mode would have been sick for Halo Wars, and free for all as well. I think is sorely needed. They did. I think they got a little creative with the red versus blue at times. Like Frozen Valley has that example where there's two base slots right next to the whoever's on the edge. So if you're smart in threes, all of you could expo. Like one guy would have his main base, and the other two guys would expo there. So you would actually have all three people have a presence on the corners, and I thought that was really smart. And they would just be a little creative with their designs. But yeah, I think free for all is really missed. I would have liked it if maybe. I'm not sure how this would work, but just an idea out there is if like a teammate of yours quit, it would be maybe taken over by like a medium or easy AI. Someone that just doesn't automatically ruin your game. Because a lot of time, I think people quit more frequently in Halo Wars 1 than Halo Wars 2, in my opinion. People would just leave. Because Halo Wars 1, yeah, since it's a slower game, you really wouldn't be getting going with hardly anything until like 7 to 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes if you're really fast. And in Halo Wars 2, a lot of people are already Tech 2 at that point. And so in Halo Wars 1, you're still running around taking out these rebel bases or still getting crates, and you'll just see someone quit. And it's a facepalm moment. And that's not really, I don't know if that's the game's fault, but it is something I dislike. You also can't mix and match between 2v2 and 3v3 unless you either do full teams or solo. So what I mean by that is like if you wanted to play 3v3, but it was just Ed and I, we could not search 3v3. We would have to exclusively search twos. And Halo Wars kind of fixed this in Team War, but that's also really confusing because it'll just randomly pick like, oh, you're going to search threes or you're going to search twos. It's still not perfect, but it wasn't even present in Halo Wars 1. And I think that was just really because of the times that really hadn't been done before. This really gets my blood boiling is 343 completely ruined Halo Wars Definitive Edition's multiplayer because they did not include matchmaking. Mm-hmm. It was pretty much like a custom games browser, more or less. And the game, if you look at the Steam charts, I mean, and ask anyone with a brain, the game was dead on launch because people would like start up a lobby. First of all, people would just have like really stupid rules, or they would kick
Peace
you.
Time.
They would kick you if they didn't like you in their lobby, or they would never ready up, or you spend 10 minutes getting everyone together in this lobby, and then as soon as the game starts, someone quits. I mean, it was just a mess, and it still is. And no one plays Definitive Edition online, and I think that game is really alive only because of mods. But I felt like that was one of the dumbest moves I've ever seen 343 do. I mean, it still really gets on my nerves.
It's basically just a custom games browser.
It is.
That's all it is.
It is.
And
it's so cringe.
Yeah, there's no ranked really. There's no true skill in DE. There's no anything that would really entice people to play competitively or even try to play competitively. It was just fun. Which, yes, that is awesome. It is just for fun. But there has to be a mix of competitive and casual in at least some sense. That's basically what Halo's always been.
Yeah, I agree completely, because that completely ruins why Skirmish exists, right? Like, you can do everything you can do in the custom game browser for the, quote, matchmaking part of Definitive Edition in skirmish mode. Like, I can create a lobby and invite people and we can play a game. So why would I do that, the exact same thing for online, but with people I don't know that are going to, and intentionally be not nice people, or make these ridiculous roles, or play on the worst maps, or like no one would pick Exile. As terrible as that map was, it was in rotation, and you would have some good games on Exile, and no one would pick it. It's just, it is so bad. I don't know what they were thinking with that. I don't know if it was because they looked at the player count and they're like, well, it's 2016, no one's playing Halo Wars anymore. Well, yeah, the game came out 7 years ago by the time DE came out. So, it makes... Yeah. I don't know if that was why they said, well, no one's playing it, so let's just remove it for the remaster. But to this day, that doesn't make any sense.
And even Halo 2 Anniversary had stuff like that. Yeah. When on launch for MCC, it had, a matchmaking. And Halo 2 Classic is barely played on MCC even now. And it still has a matchmaking, whereas DE never even decided to do that. They never updated it to do that. They basically just threw the game out, made a little bit of money, and just dropped it. Like, just a little bit of extra cash for achievements.
It's such a shame because I feel like they dropped... It's so sad because I feel like they dropped Halo Wars Definitive Edition for Halo Wars 2. But then they dropped Halo Wars 2 for MCC. And I don't... It's just... I could go on and on about this, but Halo Wars, it's such a shame that it's the state that it's in, because Halo Wars 1 has such a thriving, fun, entertaining, enjoyable matchmaking experience on 360, and that is ruined because of the release of Definitive Edition. There's confusion in the community of which Halo Wars game should I play online, and so that has already split the player base. And if they had just done it right the first time, I bet you it would be thriving and people would still be playing it today. I know I still would be. I would have loved to continue to make Halo Wars 1 videos online with Ed. Up until today, I would still be doing it, but it's not feasible to do so the way that system is implemented. And there's no crossplay either in Halo Wars Definitive Edition. And so all three... There's really 4 versions of Halo Wars right now, and that's why it's so confusing. You have the OG 360 version, and then you have 3 versions of DE, which is on Xbox One / Series X. The other one is Windows 10, and the third one is Steam. And none of the 3 of those you can play online with the other, which is another head-scratching move. Why would you do that?
Yeah, all you've done is just made it more impossible to find a game.
Right.
And I'm very sad to see that Halo Wars, is gonna... The good version of Halo Wars, like the matchmaking for it, is gonna drop this year. It's really sad to see that this old matchmaking system that they had, which predates DE by a long shot. It's about like 7 years.
Yeah.
And it's way better than anything, even if if all 3 DE games were put together in the same crossplay, I still think Halo Wars 1 is a way better matchmaking system.
When they were talking about in 2019, I believe was the year where 343 said that they were, that was when like Fort Jordan came out and they were talking about like maybe potentially adding more content into Halo Wars 2, and everyone got excited, and it turned out that they were just pulling our leg. I honestly thought at that point, because that was when we had the hype with them fixing MCC, or they had just fixed MCC. I forget, the dates blur in my mind, but I thought if they're going to go ahead and fix all the Halo games, well, maybe they'll fix Definitive Edition, because a lot of people are vocal about how matchmaking is screwed up or non-existent, and there's no crossplay. And what's even more ironic is the game is a Play Anywhere title. So if you buy it on Xbox, you get it on Windows 10, but yet you can't play with your friends on those 2 platforms if they're on the other. It's such a head-scratching move. I actually think
that's so ironic.
It is.
that a Play Anywhere title is you have to play with your friends on that.
And I mean,
That's awful.
it was confusing from the start because the only way that you could originally play it was if you got Halo Wars 2 Ultimate Edition, and then it wasn't until later they said, okay, it's a standalone release. I could go on and on about how bad they've treated this first game since it came out, but the point is that Halo Wars 1 is such a enjoyable experience with the story. I do think that the Definitive Edition is the best way to play the campaign. The animations are better. It can go up to 4K resolution. It's 60 FPS. It's very fluid. All the DLC is included. I mean, it just flies, and it's such an enjoyable experience to play. So I don't know how 360 servers are these days. If people want to, I always used to say the best way to enjoy it was play single player on Definitive Edition and then multiplayer on 360. But that's soon not going to be the case anymore if they really are taking the servers down. That's also another confusing thing, by the way, that gets my blood boiling is they say that they're taking the Halo Wars 1 servers down, but if you look at that graph or that chart, it says that it's not impacted. And I've reached out to Postums and I said, why is it even on here if it's not impacted? And he said, oh yeah, you're right. We'll update that blog post. He's never updated it. So I
classic.
I honestly think no one knows. Not even anyone at 343 knows if Halo Wars 1 360 is truly going to go down when they take these things offline. It's going to be a surprise for everyone. Maybe we'll log on in 2022 and see that it still works. No one knows.
No one just forgot. Like everyone in the office is just, looking around, going through some old stuff because they have some free time after Infinite.
That's
and
right.
Like, what's this little potato in the back? Like, why is there wires hooked up to it? And they go over there, and then they flip the potato over, and it just says Halo Wars 1 servers.
That's right. It's like an XP, like compact pavilion machine or something.
Running like Windows 98 or something.
That's right. Oh dear.
I can see that, but yeah, from the game's initial release to DE to the game had a rough development, but overall, I think it was still a great game. It was worth the money, even when it first came out originally. Its price point was fantastic for the time, and you got plenty of content out of it. And I still feel the same way about most Halo games. It one in particular when we get to it that I didn't feel like the price was worth it, but
yeah,
I feel like the price point for Halo Wars 1, coming out as a AAA and then dropping almost immediately in price I think it was a game worth playing even today. If you've never played Halo Wars 1, go out, get the game for like $5 if you still have a 360 or play Definitive Edition on the PC or even Xbox One, and you'll get a good couple hours out of it. You can play basically endlessly in customs, even if you don't have any friends that play it. So
yeah, I do agree that what 343 has done positively for DE and I guess the legacy of Halo Wars is they have made it accessible, because it did receive a little bit of criticism when it launched that it was a 360 exclusive and not on PC. And then, 343 was able to backport or reverse engineer or port, whatever the term is, to bring it to PC and add mouse and keyboard support that actually works really well for a game that was designed with a gamepad. And, no matter what platform you play on, Xbox, Windows 10, Steam, it is accessible to acquire. It now has dropped to $5 when it goes on sale. It usually goes on sale like all the time. The modding community does a fantastic job of keeping skirmishes new and interesting and exciting. There's even new maps that they're making for mods in DE. So I think with the legacy of Halo Wars 1, what it leaves is that Halo Wars doesn't necessarily need to be an FPS. It can go into these other genres and mediums and still succeed because we saw that it was both a good Halo game and a good RTS game. And I think that was a challenge for them when they had to make this. How do we take this iconic shooter trilogy and make it to a large-scale war game that you would manage individual units and buildings? And I think it was a little bit of an experiment for them to do other things like the Spartan Assault and Spartan Strike games, and maybe the Halo TV show or any of the Halo movies, mini movies that we got was inspired by the blur cutscenes because
I
people.
still, I still want that Lego game.
I do too. I I actually thought that that was a great idea, and it's a shame that they dropped it. It really is.
Yeah,
But
I saw the pictures for that and stuff. I'm like, man, it's not really a Halo game, but I'll buy it, and it looks playable. So
it,
it's
it,
just a meme at this point.
it is. I wish that they finished it because I think that would be, just a cute little introduction to the genre. And I think with the success of Halo Wars, like I said earlier, I think it could succeed in other genres. And I wonder if we'll see another Halo Wars game. I think that's a discussion when we get to Halo Wars 2 at the end of this podcast series. But overall, the legacy of Halo Wars 1, I think, is very positive. It's a great story. And it's unknown, by the way, whether or not we see these characters in Infinite. Um, I guess we'll talk about that as well when we get to Halo Wars 2. But
Yeah.
um, Hosty and I think we're both on the same page that it's just, I think it's a must play. It's not, you won't be missing out anything in the FPS stories as of yet, but I still think you must play it.
Yeah, it is a critical piece of Halo history, and you're missing a lot. You're missing all of the lore that you could get from the game. You're missing the fantastic campaign, the nice little banter between like Serena, Anders, and Cutter.
Yeah.
It's it feels like Halo without having the mainline characters, and I feel like when we get further into ODST or any of those games, they all did it great. The I'm just excited that Halo Wars 1 did it right the first time and then came out with a sequel and did it again.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because you don't get many chances if you're a real-time strategy game. I mean, just look at Command and Conquer. That was a series that was legendary for, it was 15 years or so, and then they released one bad game and the entire series vanished. And it's still not really returned. We saw a remaster of the first one, but since then, that series has been dead in the water. So I think with real time strategy, you get one shot, and not only did they did it right once, but like you said, they did it right twice. So the game is on Game Pass, so play it on Game Pass.
And there's basically infinite places to play it. So
yeah, that's right. You can play it almost anywhere, and they will make you buy it everywhere as well.
One thing I think we did not touch is the massive amount. I don't know if you want to like add this in somewhere else, but the game types.
Yeah, you had deathmatch where you got all of your tech unlocked and everything was researched, and it was really just about how well, I guess, you could micro your units, or is it macro? You command.
It was micro.
Okay, and
You're
then you had keep away and reinforcements, and your standard game mode. It had a lot.
Yeah, it felt almost like a blend of FPS and RTS with keep away, kind of like Oddball in the regular Halo games. They had a King of the Hill, didn't they?
I think they did. Yeah, I think they did.
And then reinforcements, you're just kind of given whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't it's just a macro game, and you're kind of just given units, and then you just kind of have to do whatever you want with them. Like you get like 10 ghosts or something crazy, and you have enough for a scarab, but the game's like, nah, we're just gonna give you ghosts.
That's right. You get a scarab so rarely. There's an achievement for getting a scarab in a reinforcement game.
Mm-hmm. But I think that's all I have for Halo Wars 2. Overall, great game. I would say the two ratings, IGN and Metacritic's ratings, were pretty fair. We did have a lot of dislikes with the game, but at the same time, there were a lot more likes than dislikes.
Right, right. And
you just play it.
in retrospect, I think most people that did play it have a positive review or opinion of the game, and I agree. I mean, Team Respawn and even where BTC wouldn't be around if it wasn't for Halo Wars. So there's a lot of YouTube communities and YouTube channels and groups of friends. I would have never met Ed if it wasn't for Halo Wars 1. So I have very fond memories of the game, and I'm glad that we're starting this series with Halo Wars. I'd like to, I guess, pass the question on the audience. Your favorite memories of Halo Wars? When did you purchase it? How did you get involved with the Halo Wars game series? Post your thoughts in the comments down below, and we're going to continue this. I'm unsure of the scheduling of this. I'll probably inform you all on Discord, but we're going to have, I believe it's 10 episodes, because there are 10 Halo games. So we're going to be doing an episode reviewing each Halo game, our thoughts, our opinions, our likes, our dislikes, and we'd love to have you join us. So be sure to check out that playlist. I will also be spamming everyone in Discord about it as well. And we will be back soon. The next chronological release is Halo Reach. So
I'm ready. The sadness is incoming, everybody.
That's right. That's right.
A little addition. I forgot this.
Okay.
Did you know Xanivids?
Uh-huh.
Started on Halo Wars?
There's a lot of big YouTubers that started on it. Luke the Notable as well started on Halo Wars.
Yep. They have some Halo Wars videos.
Actually, I would say Luke the Notable was like the OG, not necessarily competitor, but other channel in the Halo Wars 1 space when Team Respawn started. And maybe I should have copied him because he has like 4 million subs. So
Nah, we can't do that.
I played Halo Wars for 200 hours and this happened. Cringe.
Yeah. Drops a scarab 1,000 times.
That's right. I played Halo Wars for 100 days and this happened.
Oh my gosh.
Oh dear. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for your time, and we will see you next time with Halo Reach. Take care.
Bye. Bots.